The Discovery. The Concordat survey vessel Eternal Seeker glided through the void between stars, its crystalline sensors probing the darkness for anything of interest. Captain Nixis stood on her command deck, all four eyes focused on the swirling holographic displays that surrounded her position. Her iridescent scales shifted from deep blue to purple as she contemplated the strange readings her ship had been tracking for the past 3 cycles. "Analysis complete, Captain," announced First Scholar Venn, his tentacles dancing across the neural interface panels. "The object appears to be of human origin, approximately 3 kilometers in length. Initial scans suggest it's a generation ship, likely from their early expansion period." Nixis's scales rippled with amusement. Humans. The galaxy's youngest spacefaring species, barely 1,000 years into their journey among the stars. Finding one of their early vessels was like discovering primitive tools from a civilization's Stone Age, quaint, but ultimately irrelevant to modern society. "Show me," she commanded, and the holographic displays shifted to reveal their discovery. The vessel hung against the backdrop of stars like a massive metal whale, its hull pitted and scarred by centuries of micro-impacts. Solar collection arrays extended from its sides like great tattered wings, and massive engine clusters sat dark and silent at its stern. "Fascinating," muttered Second Scholar Cree, joining them at the display. "Look at the design." They were still using chemical propulsion and rotating habitat rings for artificial gravity. How did they expect to reach other stars with such primitive technology? The vessel's name was still visible on its hull, written in the angular human script that their computers translated as Horizon Seeker. Nixis found herself wondering what desperate dreams had driven humans to launch such an inadequate vessel into the depths of space. "Life signs?" she inquired, though she already suspected the answer. "None detected, Captain," Venn confirmed. "Environmental systems appear to have failed centuries ago." However. He paused, his tentacles twisting in a gesture of confusion. "There's something odd about the power readings." "Explain." "Well, there shouldn't be any power readings at all from a vessel this old, but we're detecting trace energy signatures. They're extremely faint, almost as if." "As if what, Scholar?" "As if they're being deliberately masked," Venn finished, his voice uncertain. Nixis dismissed the concern with a wave of her hand. "Likely residual decay from their primitive fission reactors. Humans were notorious for their reliance on unstable power sources." She studied the vessel for a moment longer before making her decision. "Prepare a salvage team. The Concordat Archaeological Council will want to study this relic." As her crew began their preparations, a message arrived from the human vessel. It was transmitted via primitive radio waves, another charming artifact of humanity's early space age. "Warning, this vessel is protected under Article 7 of the Human Expansion Directive. Unauthorized boarding will be met with appropriate defensive measures. Please transmit identification and purpose." The bridge crew shared a moment of amusement at the quaint warning. "An automated message system," Cree suggested. "Still functioning after all these centuries. Remarkable, in its way. Record it for the archaeologists," Nixis ordered. "They'll want to study every aspect of this find." She turned to her operations officer. "Deploy the salvage drones. Let's see what secrets this ancient human vessel has to share." As the first wave of drones approached the Horizon Seeker, none of the Concordat crew noticed the subtle shift in the vessel's power signatures. Deep within its hull, systems that had waited centuries for this moment began to wake. The humans had learned long ago that the best place to hide advanced technology was behind a facade of primitiveness, and the Horizon Seeker was about to demonstrate just how far humanity had come since their early expansion period. The trap was about to be sprung, and the Concordat was about to learn why humanity's apparent technological backwardness was the greatest deception in galactic history. First contact gone wrong. The Concordat salvage drones approached the Horizon Seeker with practiced precision, their cutting beams already warming up to slice through the ancient hull. Captain Nixis watched from her command deck as the first drone made contact with the human vessel's outer plating. That's when everything started to go wrong. The drone's cutting beam, capable of slicing through modern battle-grade armor, simply scattered off the hull like light on water. Before anyone could react, the point of contact began to shimmer, the supposedly primitive metal flowing like quicksilver. Impossible, breathed Second Scholar Cree, all 6 of his sensory appendages extended in disbelief. That hull composition, it's responding like a living metal. First Scholar Ven's tentacles danced frantically across his console. Captain, these readings make no sense. The metal appears to be, learning from our attempts to breach it. Each subsequent cutting attempt is less effective than the last. Nixis's scales shifted to a deep red of concern. Pull back the drones. Now. But before the order could be carried out, something reached out from the Horizon Seeker, not a weapon or a defensive system, but a signal. It cascaded through the Concordat vessel's communications array like water through a broken dam, effortlessly bypassing their most sophisticated encryption. The bridge's holographic displays flickered and transformed. Where moments before they had shown sensor readings and tactical data, now they displayed a single human figure. The being appeared female, dressed in what looked like a formal military uniform that none of their databases recognized. "Greetings, Captain Nixis of the Concordat vessel Eternal Seeker," the figure said, speaking perfect High Concordat. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen, Earth Defense Force, and you are currently attempting to salvage an active military vessel of the Human Cooperative." Nixis fought to maintain her composure. "This is impossible. Our scans showed no life signs, no active power signatures. This ship is centuries old." The human smile reminded Nixis of a predator. "Your scans showed exactly what we wanted them to show, Captain. Humanity learned long ago that the best way to protect our expansion corridors was to hide them in plain sight. What better disguise than a primitive generation ship that any advanced species would dismiss as harmless?" As if to emphasize her words, the Horizon Seeker's exterior began to change. The pitted, scarred hull smoothed and shifted, solar arrays retracting into previously invisible seams. The dull metal began to take on a deeper, almost organic sheen, and lines of light pulsed beneath its surface like blood through veins. "By the first light," Cree whispered. "It's a metamorphic vessel." "Quite correct, Scholar Cree," Admiral Chen replied. "Though that's just one of its many features. Your salvage attempt has activated our defensive protocols. Standard procedure requires me to demonstrate exactly what you're dealing with before we proceed with diplomatic negotiations." Before anyone could respond, a small asteroid about half the size of the Eternal Seeker simply vanished. There was no explosion, no energy discharge, it simply ceased to exist, leaving not even atoms behind. "Phase displacement technology," the Admiral explained casually. "We found it's more efficient than traditional weapons. Less cleanup required." Her expression grew serious. "Now, shall we discuss the proper protocols for encountering human vessels in supposedly abandoned space?" Nixis felt her scales shift to pale yellow, the color of submission. Everything she thought she knew about humanity's technological capabilities had been wrong. The primitive chemical engines, the rotating habitats, the solar arrays, all carefully crafted deceptions hiding something far more advanced than anything the Concordat had imagined possible. "How?" she began, then gathered herself. "How many more of these vessels are out there?" Admiral Chen's smile returned. "Captain, asking that question suggests you still don't understand the situation. The real question isn't how many ships like this we have." She paused, letting her next words land with full impact. "The question is, how many of our ships that you've encountered weren't like this?" The implications hit Nixis like a gravity wave. Every human vessel they'd ever encountered, every supposedly primitive human colony ship, every struggling human outpost, how many of them were simply waiting, watching, gathering intelligence while the galaxy's powers dismissed humanity as an upstart species barely worth noticing? A new signal began broadcasting from the Horizon Seeker, this time on all frequencies, designed to reach any nearby Concordat vessels that might be monitoring the situation. This is an Earth Defense Force priority alert. The Eternal Seeker has inadvertently triggered first contact protocols in Security Zone 7. All Concordat vessels are advised to maintain their positions. A diplomatic delegation is en route. Please stand by for further instructions. As more lights began to appear along the Horizon Seeker's hull, Nixus realized that her routine survey mission had just become something much more significant. She was about to become the first Concordat captain to make official contact with humanity's real civilization, not the carefully constructed facade they showed the rest of the galaxy. She just hoped the rest of the Concordat was ready for what that revelation would mean. The Awakening. The space around the Horizon Seeker began to ripple like heat waves over desert sand. Where moments before there had been empty void, shapes started to emerge, first as ghostly outlines, then solidifying into reality itself. 3 massive vessels, each easily dwarfing the Eternal Seeker, shimmered into existence. Phase cloaking, First Scholar Ven muttered, his tentacles writhing in agitation. They were here the whole time, watching us. Admiral Chen's holographic image nodded approvingly. Very observant, Scholar. The Horizon Seeker never travels alone. We just prefer to keep our escort vessels discreet. The new ships bore little resemblance to the primitive human vessels Nixus had encountered before. Their hulls seemed to drink in starlight, their surfaces rippling with the same living metal technology they'd witnessed earlier. No visible weapons, no external sensors, no obvious propulsion systems, just smooth, elegant forms that somehow managed to look both beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Captain, Kree called out, his voice tight with tension, I'm detecting quantum entanglement signatures from those vessels. They're not just communicating, they're sharing consciousness. They're linked. Artificial intelligence integration, Admiral Chen explained. Or as we prefer to call it, synthetic consciousness mesh. Each of our ships is both an individual entity and part of a larger awareness. The Horizon Seeker you see before you isn't just a ship, it's part of a distributed intelligence network that spans our entire territory. Nixus felt her scales shift through various colors as she tried to process the implications. But, every report, every encounter, all our data suggests human AI development was still in its infancy. Yes, Chen smiled. That's what we wanted you to think. Humanity learned some harsh lessons in our early days of space exploration. We discovered that advanced civilizations tend to react poorly to emerging species who develop too quickly. So we adapted. We hide our true capabilities behind a carefully maintained facade of technological limitation. As if to demonstrate, the Horizon Seeker continued its transformation. What had appeared to be ancient habitat rings reconfigured themselves into elegant geometric patterns that pulsed with internal energy. The massive chemical engines at the stern dissolved into countless smaller structures that Nixus's sensors couldn't even begin to classify. Quantum probability drives, Ven breathed, his scientific curiosity temporarily overcoming his fear. They're not using conventional propulsion at all. They're manipulating probability fields to move through spacetime. Again, correct, Chen nodded. Though that's a rather simplified description. We found traditional faster-than-light travel rather limiting. Reality itself is far more flexible than most species realize. A new hologram appeared beside Chen, a complex three-dimensional map of known space. Thousands of points of light marked what Nixus had always thought were abandoned human colonies or failed expansion attempts. Now, watching those points pulse in perfect synchronization, she understood. Each one was a node in humanity's hidden network, a disguised outpost of their true civilization. The Concordat, Nixus said slowly, all the major powers, we've been surrounded this entire time, haven't we? Not surrounded, Chen corrected. Protected. Humanity has no interest in conquest or dominion. We maintain this deception because we've seen what happens when advanced civilizations feel threatened by rapid technological progress. Our network exists to prevent conflict, not initiate it. Deep within the Horizon Seeker, more systems were awakening. Spaces that had appeared to be primitive cryogenic storage pods revealed themselves as quantum computation centers. The seemingly basic life support system transformed into something that manipulated the fundamental forces of reality itself. "Your civilization," Cree asked, unable to contain his curiosity, "how long has it truly been spacefaring?" Admiral Chen's expression became somewhat enigmatic. "That depends on how you define civilization. The humanity you thought you knew, the one struggling with chemical rockets and primitive AI. That version of us hasn't existed for over 10,000 years. We simply found it convenient to maintain that image while we worked on more interesting projects." More interesting projects? Nixis felt her scales pale again. Like what? Like finding ways to ensure peace in a galaxy prone to conflict. Like developing technologies that could end scarcity without causing societal collapse. Like preparing for threats that most species don't even know exist. Chen's expression grew serious. "The universe is far older and more dangerous than most realize, Captain. Someone needs to stand guard." The implications of everything they were learning threatened to overwhelm Nixis's ability to process it. Humanity wasn't just more advanced than they'd believed, they were operating on a level that made most Concordat technology look primitive by comparison. "What happens now?" she finally asked. "Now," Chen replied, "we begin the real first contact process. Your crew has been given a rare glimpse behind humanity's mask. The question is, are the Concordat ready to know what truly lives in the spaces between their stars?" As if in response to her words, more lights began appearing in the void around them, more ships dropping their phase cloaking, more evidence of humanity's true presence in the galaxy. The age of deception was ending, and a new era of understanding was about to begin. Whether the galaxy was ready for it or not. Revelation and response. The Eternal Seeker's bridge had fallen into stunned silence as more human vessels continued to materialize around them. Each new arrival demonstrated technologies that contradicted everything the Concordat thought they knew about humanity's capabilities. Nixis watched as her sensor officers struggled to categorize ships that seemed to defy the known laws of physics. "Your silence is understandable," Admiral Chen said, her holographic form now joined by several others, each representing different facets of human leadership. "Finding out that your galaxy's primitive newcomers are actually its guardians can be disorienting. Why reveal yourselves now?" Nixis finally asked. "Why not maintain the deception?" A new figure stepped forward in the holographic display, an elderly human male wearing what appeared to be civilian clothing. "Because the galaxy is changing, Captain Nixis. Threats are emerging that require a more coordinated response." Director Marcus Wells, Earth Strategic Planning Division, he introduced himself. "We've been monitoring several concerning developments in deep space. Things that make our continued anonymity a luxury we can no longer afford." Before Nixis could respond, her ship's sensors detected a massive surge of quantum activity. Space itself seemed to fold inward several thousand kilometers away, and something emerged that defied description. It was a human vessel, but it dwarfed everything else present, including the Horizon Seeker. "The Prometheus," Admiral Chen said, noting the Concordat crew's reaction. "Our first true deep space guardian. What you're seeing is only about 10% of its actual mass, the rest exists in parallel probability states." Then scientific instruments were practically overloading as they tried to analyze the massive vessel. "The energy readings, they're beyond anything in our database. That single ship could power the entire Concordat for centuries. Power generation stopped being a concern for us around the same time we cracked quantum probability manipulation," Wells explained. "But raw energy is hardly the most interesting aspect of our technological development." As if to demonstrate his point, the space between the assembled ships began to shimmer. What appeared to be windows in reality itself opened, showing glimpses of other places, other times, human outposts and installations that existed in dimensions the Concordat hadn't even theorized about. "Your species," Cree observed, his scientific curiosity temporarily overcoming his shock, "you're not just technologically advanced. You've transcended conventional physical limitations entirely." "Not transcended," Chen corrected. "We simply learned to work with reality's true nature rather than trying to force it to conform to our expectations. The universe is far more flexible than most species realize." A new alarm sounded on the Eternal Seeker's bridge. Multiple Concordat vessels were dropping out of faster-than-light travel nearby, obviously responding to their prolonged silence. Nixis felt her scales shift with anxiety, knowing how this situation could quickly escalate. But before the newly arrived Concordat ships could even power up their weapons, they found themselves frozen in space, caught in some kind of temporal stasis field projected by the human vessels. "Please convey to your reinforcements that hostile action would be unfortunate," Wells said, his tone gentle but firm. "We've spent millennia avoiding conflict. We'd prefer to maintain that record." Nixis quickly sent the necessary orders, watching as her fellow Concordat captains struggled to process what they were seeing. The human deception had been so complete, so perfectly maintained, that its revelation was shattering thousands of years of assumptions about the galaxy's power structure. "There are things coming," Admiral Chen said, her expression growing serious. "Things that have been sleeping in the dark between galaxies. We built this facade, this mask of primitiveness, so we could prepare without drawing attention. But the time for hiding is over." The holographic display shifted, showing images that made Nixis's scales turn pure white with fear. Vast entities moving between the stars, geometries that hurt to look at, things that shouldn't exist in any sane universe. "This," Wells gestured to the horrifying images, "is what we've been preparing for." While the galaxy's powers played their political games and fought their territorial wars, humanity stood guard against threats they couldn't even imagine. "Why?" Nixis found herself asking. "Why take on this burden alone?" "Because someone had to," Chen replied simply. "And we had already learned the hard way that most species aren't ready to face these kinds of truths. So we waited, we watched, and we built our defenses. The mask of primitiveness gave us the freedom to work without causing panic." The images shifted again, showing vast networks of human installations and vessels, all previously hidden by their advanced technology. The scale of the deception was almost incomprehensible, an entire civilization operating in plain sight, yet unseen. "The question now, Captain Nixis," Wells said, "is whether the Concordat is ready to join us in this fight. Are your people prepared to look beyond their assumptions and face the real challenges that await us all?" Nixis looked at her crew, at the assembled human ships, at the glimpses of impossible things moving in the darkness between stars. She realized that everything she thought she knew about humanity, about her own civilization's place in the galaxy, had been based on carefully crafted illusions. And now those illusions were falling away, revealing truths that would change everything forever. A new dawn. In the hours following humanity's revelation, the space around the Horizon Seeker had become a gathering point for representatives from across the Concordat. Emergency meetings were being held, debates raged across encrypted channels, and countless sensors attempted to analyze the impossible technologies on display before them. Captain Nixis stood in what the humans called a true space conference room aboard the Prometheus, a space that existed simultaneously in multiple dimensional planes. Through the room's transparent walls, she could see both normal space and something else, something her mind struggled to categorize. "Your neural patterns will adjust," Admiral Chen assured her, noticing her disorientation. "Exposure to quantum-shifted spaces takes some getting used to." The room was filled with both human and Concordat representatives, all gathered around a display that showed the full scope of humanity's hidden network. Nixis watched as her species' best scientific minds tried to process the implications of what they were seeing. "The scope of this," First Scholar Ven whispered, his tentacles moving in patterns of pure astonishment. You've had quantum phase technology watching every major system in known space. Every primitive colony ship, every struggling outpost. All part of our defensive network, Director Wells confirmed. Though defense was only part of their purpose. They were also gathering data, studying the various species of our galaxy, determining who might be ready for the truth. The display shifted, showing what the humans called deep space anomalies, the threats they had been preparing to face. The images made even the most seasoned Concordat officers recoil. We call them the Void Hunters, Chen explained. They exist in the spaces between conventional reality. We first detected them 3,000 years ago, when they consumed an entire civilization in the Andromeda galaxy. A civilization that, ironically, was far more technologically advanced than we pretended to be. How? Second scholar Cree struggled to form the question. How did you develop these technologies? How did you advance so far without anyone noticing? Wells smiled. By understanding that the greatest advancement often comes from changing how you think, not just what you know. Humanity's greatest breakthrough wasn't technological, it was philosophical. We stopped trying to conquer nature and started trying to understand it instead. The display showed the evolution of human technology, from their genuine early days of chemical rockets to their current state of quantum probability manipulation and synthetic consciousness integration. The progression was staggering in its implications. We need allies, Chen said directly. The Void Hunters are waking up, and even humanity's combined technological might may not be enough to stop them. We need the Concordat's help, not because of your current technology, but because of your potential. Nixis felt her scales shift in confusion. Our potential? But your technology is so far beyond ours. Perhaps, Wells agreed. But you have something we need, a fresh perspective. Humanity has been carrying this burden alone for millennia. We've become set in our ways. We need new ideas, new approaches. The Concordat's scientific and philosophical traditions could provide exactly that. The room's display shifted again, showing a proposed integration of human and Concordat technologies. The possibilities were staggering, combinations that neither civilization had considered before. This is why we chose your ship, Captain Nixis, Chen revealed. Your crew's response to finding what you thought was an abandoned vessel, the curiosity, the desire to understand rather than simply exploit, it showed us that the Concordat might be ready for the truth. A new alert caught everyone's attention. The deep space sensors were showing movement, the Void Hunters were becoming more active. Their impossible geometries twisted through dimensions that shouldn't exist, drawing ever closer to inhabited space. We don't have much time, Wells said gravely. Humanity has prepared for this moment for thousands of years, but we cannot face it alone. Will the Concordat stand with us? Nixis looked at her fellow Concordat representatives, seeing the same realization in their expressions. The galaxy was not what they had thought it was. The comfortable assumptions about humanity's place in the cosmic order had been swept away, revealing both terrible dangers and incredible possibilities. We will need to inform the Concordat Council, she said finally. This will change everything, our society, our understanding of reality itself. Change is coming whether we're ready or not, Chen replied. The only question is whether we face it together or separately. Nixis turned to the window, watching as more ships arrived, both human vessels dropping their deceptive masks and Concordat ships coming to witness the truth. In the distance, the Horizon Seeker had fully transformed, its true form a testament to how far humanity had come and how far the Concordat might go. Together, she declared, her scales shifting to the deep purple of commitment. Whatever comes from the void between stars, we face it together. The age of deception was over. The age of unity was about to begin. And somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, ancient entities stirred, unaware that their supposed prey had spent millennia preparing for their arrival. The real war for survival was about to begin.